Good evening once again, and welcome to the Monday Review Show. This is where Keith and I, we look over incidents, decisions, controversial or otherwise, from games from the last week. We are on air every Monday night at 8 p.m. UK Irish time. We're on the same timeline. And if you'd like to make any comments, you'd like to ask a question, please do so. We go out on Facebook. We go out on Twitter, and we also go out on YouTube. Yeah. So we've got some things lined up for you now. There's been a lot of controversy and talk about and complaints about, etc., about VAR. I mean, some like it, some don't like it. But, you know, it came to produce something of good this last weekend in the game between Everton and Manchester United. What I'm talking about is where Anthony Martial from Man United was yellow carded for alleged diving. When the referee checked the monitor, he discovered that in fact he wasn't diving, he was fouled. He had been yellow carded for this dive, inverted commas, but the referee subsequently discovered that it was a penalty and the yellow card was rescinded. Did you watch the game, Keith, and do you agree?
Yeah. Well, I did watch the game. I was a little surprised on the first view that a penalty kick wasn't awarded. I thought it was a very courageous call initially to yellow card Martial for simulation. When I'm not being clever here, I thought, wow, I think it's contact, but it's easier on television than it is on the field of play. Mm-hmm. And I think this actually, for me, was an excellent use of VAR. He's cautioned the player. He believes it's simulation. VAR comes in. It goes to the monitor. It's confirmed that there is a foul challenge and a penalty kick is awarded. The yellow card is rescinded. At last, I'm thinking, this is what VAR is for. It's been used well. And I came away thinking, good, we've got a positive in terms of how VAR should operate.
Now, all the doubters out there about VAR can now, hopefully have little less doubt that it does actually work. It can sometimes work in your favor. Sometimes the guys get it wrong and it works against them. But I think that's a very good, almost a classic example of what VAR is all about. Now, as it turned out, United won 3-0, but it could have been a vital goal that it might have only been 1-0, and it could have been all based on that VAR decision. So, well done to the match official for going and checking. Can't remember his name now offhand, but anyway. And just while talking about officials, a big congratulations to Rob Jones in the Spurs versus Aston Villa game. I thought he was excellent. Never put up with nonsense. No such thing as players falling down, diving, and a lot of them, I saw them stamping the ground after he waved them away. Absolutely first class. Yes. Now, the big question is, why can't they all do the same? Consistency.
Yeah, I mean, this guy actually in the last 18 months has really come on as a referee, and he stamps his authority on the game, which is what I think players and every fan wants. There's no doubt that I think Howard Webb at the PGMOL is seeing Rob as a consistent performer. He's getting the games, which I think is important. And, I just feel that his reward should be the next set of fixtures that will come out tomorrow, I think. He should be on the list. It'd be my first choice to say, right, okay, you're doing really well. You can have another game and repeat it. So good on him. I think it was great to have the opportunity to praise the referee rather than sort of
indeed
to be seen critical every week.
Yeah, and we have been getting a bit of criticism, both you and I, because we criticize. But I always emphasize that we don't criticize for what they are doing. We criticize for what they are not doing, and sometimes they are not doing their job. And one particular critic, again, I mentioned him, my very dear friend from down in County Cork, Declan King. He says, "Oh, you're always criticizing referees," and I say, "No, we criticize them for what they are not doing, and some of them are not doing their jobs."
Yeah.
Now, Declan is a big Man City fan, and he reckons that City were denied a goal against Liverpool on the weekend, where there was an incident between the Liverpool keeper and the City attacker. I can't remember who it was. Did you see it, and what did you think?
Well, I did, and it poses a question, and the question is this: that we have seen in the English Premier League, referees over many years now allow grappling, holding, and pulling without being punished. Here was a situation where there was I mean, first of all, I've looked at this clip several times. The goalkeeper makes a complete hash of it. The contact of his opponent appears to be absolutely minimal. It's not a pull, it's not a hold. And I wrote in the Daily Telegraph, and it caused quite a stir, because I believe this goal should have stood. I don't think there was a foul. There might have been contact, but I don't think there was a pulling offence. I don't think the player pushed him. I just think the goalkeeper flat made the mistake. The ball was in the back of the net. Referee, stay out of it. Just give the goal. I don't think it needed an interrogation. So for me, I have to say I thought the match official got it wrong. And I know that's open to criticism, because, you know, the argument is, well, he's got his hands on his opponent. But again, that doesn't mean to say he's committed an offence. So
I must say, I saw it as well. And I sometimes think goalkeepers get far too much protection because they are just another player. That wear a different color jersey, which allows them to handle the ball in inside the penalty area. But I really do think they get far too much protection. And yet there were other incidents in the penalty area where players were pulling and dragging at each other, and referees seemed to let it go on. And this is why criticism. I
mean, this is why, you know, when we see reaction of players, this is about the inconsistency that we've seen not just in recent weeks. This is a long-term problem of grappling, as Hugh McIlvenney, that wonderful journalist, in a conversation with me, explained. And he said, why aren't your referees punishing grappling? So it was happening in my time when I was boss of the PGMOL. And we had a long conversation. And we then tried to start to eradicate it. But then I left, and it's gone back to where it was. Holding, pulling, grappling, however you look at it, takes place in every game. And it's not being punished. So when we get a light touch, not a pull, and the goalkeeper decides, I'm going to deceive the referee and go down, and the referee falls for it.
And the other nonsensical action by the referee, going into the players and saying none of this and none of that, steps back, and they're at it again. So as far as I'm concerned, when things like that happen, it's one of two things. It's either a goal kick or a free kick to the defending team, or it's a penalty kick to the attacking team. It's one or the other. But honestly, and this thing about putting their arms around players and holding them off with their bodies, that shouldn't be allowed. Any player, attacker, should be allowed the freedom to come and go as he pleases. But that's not happening. I mean, and that sort of thing is really, it's holding, Keith. It's not even obstruction. It's holding.
I mean, what I found amazing was that if you take last week, where, in my opinion, Joe Linton in the Newcastle v Arsenal game, with two hands on his opponent, pushed his opponent, and the referee and the VAR decided that was a goal. There was no push. Referee Stuart Atwell. Yesterday, Manchester City, the slightest of touch, not a push, not a hold, and it's disallowed. No VAR intervention. VAR Stuart Atwell. Now, I'm not having a go, but in 2 weeks, he's got 2 decisions. And one, he comes in and says, that's a push. I think he was wrong. This week, he comes in and says, it's holding. I think he's wrong. So I think somebody needs to give him some operational advice on what a foul is and what's holding and what's pulling.
But you see, now on that, Keith, to give him advice, what advice does he need that he doesn't already know? And again, people are going to say, now you're criticizing referees, but yes, we're criticizing them for what they're not doing, and they're not doing their job. I mean, Stuart Atwell is a very experienced guy, probably, well, I'm going to say probably has a FIFA badge, but I'm seeing guys literally in the Premier League a week and they've got a FIFA badge, so it doesn't have the same value as it used to be, used to. But how can he make mistakes like that? And he's not under pressure. He doesn't have players crowding around and shouting and screaming in his ear. He's miles away from the ground in a little room somewhere with loads of them. How can they not make the correct decision?
Well, I think that the problem that we see within the select group of referees, and it must be frustrating for Howard Webb, is a lack Consistency across the referees. Just as I used to do, get them in a room and actually say, when we looked at foul challenges, as an example, careless, reckless, excessive force, get a series of film clips together and demonstrate in those blocks what we as a group will accept as a careless challenge, what we'll accept as a reckless challenge, lay down the criteria, which I think is clear in law anyway, and endangering the safety of an opponent with excessive force, serious foul play, show those clips, discuss them, and say, right, okay, we're going out of this room, and as a group of referees, faced with any one of these 3, this is what we're going to do. But see, I think they are the worst enemy, because they're inconsistent across the group in terms of grappling, holding, pulling, in terms of how they deal with on-field dissent, how they deal with players. And look, yeah, we are at times critical of referees, because the difference between a referee at grassroots level is that he's effectively managing a game of football. At the elite level, you're managing a game of football, but you're also managing an event. And you're sending out the appropriate signals worldwide. How are you officiating that game? And you have to lead by example. You expect your best referees to deliver week in, week out, the best performances and correct application of law.
Is there any difference in the decision-making now of the match officials, in your opinion, with VAR than there was without VAR? In other words, are they less brave now to make those decisions?
I think that there are 2 things, and I'd put it. First of all, I've talked about lazy refereeing, and I talk about the need for the referee to be the decision maker out on the field of play. Make your decisions as you see them.
Yeah.
Don't hesitate. Don't suddenly believe what is the monkey on my shoulder going to say. Yeah. Look, make them in the honest fashion, and what VAR will do is when you make a clear and obvious error, which I think is a a statement that the IFAB should be looking at, clarifying if need be what is a clear and obvious error. A clear and obvious error for me, should it a VAR operator between the eyes? I mean, it stands out. It stood out in that decision with Anthony Martial. The VAR operator said, "No, that's not a dive, ref. This is a clear and obvious error. I'm getting involved." So it's actually, I think I've said it before. I think the only way that we will improve in the English Premier League, the way VAR operates, is to have an independent panel of referees, whether they're ex-referees or current referees, is not a matter of problem. All I want them to be is VAR specialists. In the way that the World Cup and FIFA, when they come to a World Cup, they make selections. They make selections of referees, assistant referees, and VAR. And what they do then is, you're going to the World Cup as a VAR operator. You're sat in that room with Pierluigi Collina and others, and they're laying down the law. They're going into the VAR operation knowing and expecting high levels of performance because they've been very clear and precise. I shudder at the fact that you can have a referee officiating as a VAR on a Saturday and then and maybe running into problems, and then on Sunday walking out in the middle of a football field to referee a football match. And it's not just conducive to good performance as a sports person.
As a matter of interest, do you know who the VAR guy was in the Everton United game? Because he obviously made the right decision.
I'll have a look at that whilst we talk.
Not okay. Keith, and on that pressure that referees are on, there was a story that said that British Airways pilots are going to, I don't know what, give advice to the Premier League referees on how to handle pressure. Is this a joke or is it real?
No, I think it's amused. I'm slightly amused by it because either in this conversation or in a conversation on a podcast, I was explaining that having listened to 2 shows involving Howard Webb and Michael Owen, and listening for the first time to the conversations between VAR and referee, well, it was just chaotic. It was just incredible. And I thought, as a referee, I've seen this before. I saw it when we introduced the communication kits, when everybody from the touchline and the 4th official wanted to referee a football match. So I made it clear that what we would do is we would have a criteria of conversation. So I think that, and I said, look, in that conversation, I said, look, aircraft pilots, when they're talking to air traffic control, they're not saying, "Hey, mate," or "Hey, Frank," or "Joe." It's a professional, limited, very clear and precise conversation. That's what I said. So some weeks later, we get airline pilots coming in to talk to the referees. All I can say is this. I think that if they are able to show, but I would have thought that the referees themselves and Howard Webb could do this, and that is get the conversation to the minimum amount of words and do it professionally. And I would only have one person talking to the referee, and that's the VAR. As you know, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, there was, when we had that incident, and there was Darren England as the 4th official, or the VAR. Mm-hmm. They could have stopped the game and should have stopped the game, but the only guy who was calling it right on that particular incident was the technician, who's not supposed to talk at all to the match official. So it was quite amusing. What was that game again?
Wasn't that the Liverpool game where the goal was disallowed?
Yes. But it's
John Brooks.
The Man United game, the VAR was Chris Kavanagh.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And,
you call it Kavanagh. We call it Kavanagh.
Well, it might be Kavanagh. Yeah, I do
Just
it.
emphasis on the different syllables. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There was there was a thing I put up on Facebook about player goes down injured, and the opposition put the ball out of play, which they're not obliged to do. It's fair play and it's good sportsmanship, etc.
Yeah.
But they're not obliged to do it, and because, as you well remember, I'm sure, not that long ago, where it happened in an Arsenal game, and Arsenal went on. They took the throw in. They should have given it back to the opposition. Not sure who they were playing.
Sheffield
They should have
United.
given it back to the opposition. Who was it?
Sheffield United.
Sheffield United. And
Yeah.
they should have given it back, and they didn't, and went on to score, and there was absolute uproar.
Yeah.
So they're not obliged to do that. But
No.
likewise, if the ball goes out of play, and I saw it only this week, can't remember the game now, certainly this weekend, where the referee went over to the player taking the throw in and was telling him, what am I saying? Gesturing to him, give it back to the goalkeeper.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
He shouldn't be doing
No.
that.
No, what the Premier League has.
Can we take the one, Keith, first about the injury? Yeah, and the ball out.
Well, they have a protocol. The protocol is that if a player is injured and the opposition decide to kick the ball out of play for fair play and promoting fair play, not in the laws of the game, there is an expectation that the protocol that is laid down by the Premier League itself to PGMOL, that the ball will be thrown to the opposition in order to restart the game. But there's nothing in the law to do that. The Arsenal Sheffield United FA Cup game did cause uproar. There was that protocol in place, and Arsenal very sportingly said, as a club, we don't condone what has happened. The player has done something against the protocol that we've signed up to, therefore we would like the game to replayed. And it was replayed, that particular game. In the same way, in a way, the similar protocol of the the Premier League was that we did not want, they didn't want players to kick the ball out of play when a player was injured. They made it very clear to the PGMOL, if and when you decide the game requires to be stopped for an injury, this is what we expect you to do. We don't want our players kicking the ball out, because what we were faced with was an escalating, I'm a player, I'm going down, therefore I'm going to kick the ball out. Their own team.
Yes. So there's no obligation on them to do that.
It was promoting cheating, so we stopped it. But there's nothing in law. But it's a protocol.
And likewise with the referee, he shouldn't be telling players back to. He should just stand back and wait for the throw in, and where the ball lands, that's it. So this is where if I was involved with refereeing, I would say to them, don't get involved in those things. It's none of your business. You're just there to decide on when a foul is committed and when it's not committed, and when a goal is scored and when it's not getting too involved with the players. Pass it back to them.
I mean, it's an interesting one, because in Europe, they were operating the multi-ball system. And we operated in the Premier League, the multi-ball system at that particular point in time. And we then saw cheating. We saw ball boys holding on to the ball. Yeah. And now, of course, they do play with the multi-ball system, and the ball itself is placed around the perimeter of the field, various balls, to actually prevent any clash between a clever ball boy who throws the ball in the opposite direction to the player. And
we had one of those.
Problem. Yeah. So
we had an incident with a player, wasn't it, when the ball boy, was it Chelsea?
Yes.
Where he was alleged to have assaulted the ball boy, or the ball boy wouldn't give the ball, whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So tomorrow you send me a lovely note today, and maybe you'd like to go through it, and I'll give you the opportunity. The IFAB, the International Football Association Board, are meeting tomorrow, and they're going to discuss all about crowding around the referee and who should speak to the referee and so on.
Yeah.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, the idea is that they're concerned about the fact that it's an escalating problem in the game of players surrounding the referee. And there is no doubt in my mind that this is a long-term problem, but it's suddenly escalating because of the delays in VAR. And therefore, when we now get a penalty kick, we're getting players surrounding the referee, asking him to get the VAR involved. And so there is the problem of players surrounding the referee. Now, I know in the Premier League, if you get 2 or more players surrounding the referee, then that is a special report and the Premier League act upon it. The IFAB are going to examine, and it probably use the Premier League to use the captains as the only communicator with the referee. Now, they think that's new. I can tell them that when I was in charge years ago, we had a campaign, or the Premier League did, which was get on with the game, get on with each other, get on with the referee. And what happened was all the clubs signed up. This was the owners of the club, the CEO of the club, and the captain of the team, and the manager all signed up a protocol. That protocol was in agreement of that particular process, but the highlight of that was 1 hour before kickoff, the captains come into the dressing room with the team sheets, with the manager or senior coach, and the referee is likely to say to the captain, "My name's Frank, how do you wish to be addressed on the field of play?" At that point, he then sort of gets his 2 penneth in and say, "Look, I will communicate through you, but it doesn't give you any additional authority." That worked quite successfully, apart from where we had teams where the captain of the team was the goalkeeper. You know, if you had a problem in the opposite penalty area, you're hardly going to have or promote the idea of a goalkeeper who's the captain running the full length of the pitch to have a conversation with the referee. Yeah. So in their discussions tomorrow, I hope that, first of all, they will see the dangers of it in relation to the goalkeeper being the captain. And the other thing that worries me a little bit is that I'm a referee who likes a step process when I referee, the quiet word. So I was happy to talk to any player because I was a referee who wanted to prevent. It wasn't a long conversation. It was perhaps a small warning as I'm on the run alongside the player, just saying, "Calm down," or "I want an improvement in your behavior," all those sort of things. So I think part of a referee managing a football match is communication. Through accurate verbal, limited conversation, not the matey things that we say. I mean, look, I sometimes shudder at what I see with referees. They want a long time conversation. They want to be friends with everybody. Well, I'm telling you, you can't be friends with every player because players have different mentalities, different levels of behavior. And with some, you've got to actually make it very clear to them, get out of my space. I don't want to hear what you say.
Well, here's a comment from Brandon. It looks like he agrees with you. He says, "I don't like keepers as captains either. In the youth leagues, sometimes an injured / non-player is the captain. It makes no sense."
Yeah. Absolutely spot on, Brandon. I mean, Brandon's a great communicator. He thinks very deeply about the game, and I think that reflects in his views. I agree with him. And I think that hopefully tomorrow that the IFAB sometimes I get the impression that it's the playing side that come up with these great ideas, and referees at that point have to get the two penneth in and say, "Hey, just a minute, that might be good on paper, but it's not going to work practically."
In a word, Keith, are you in favour of sin bins?
Yes, I am. And because I've seen them used effectively at grassroots level. Sometimes I don't want to see them used as explained as a reduction of a red card. If you're sending a player to a sin bin, the minimum he's got is a yellow card. That's for sure. Otherwise, you don't send him to a sin bin just to say, "Get out my hair." It's how it's used.
Would you put it in then between a yellow and a red?
I'd put it in. I think if there is a player disputing or showing dissent, right, and I'm getting to the point of a yellow, I'm giving him a yellow, and then I'm actually dismissing him.
In Ireland here, in the Gaelic football, the traditional Irish football, they have what they call a black card. So the player can get sent off. He's not allowed to come back, but a substitute can come in from one of the named substitutes. He can be substitute, but he's out. It seems to be working reasonably well for them. So you can have a yellow, you can have a black, and you can have a red, obviously. So that's where the black.
I think the sin bin is a means of where a player is losing control and not taking note, then ship him off to the box or the tent or whatever you want to use, and calm down. I mean, it works in rugby. It definitely has worked at grassroots level, but you get referees using it very sparingly. But so it doesn't get abused. And I must say, on our league, the Northern Counties East League, the referees use it sparingly, but when it is used, it's very effective, because what happens is it's a team punishment.
Yeah.
The whole team get punished, those that are remaining on the field of play.
Yeah. And it could be their best player.
And it's immediate. It's not so I do favour the sin bin.
Keith, as always, thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you out there for watching. We'll do it all again next Monday night. Until then, goodbye and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thanks.